underestimating his ability to not remember people. And if he had his way, he would be interacting as little as possible with the team's social media manager. Troy had no interest in that shit. He left Jen to pack up her gear and made his way to the locker room. The room had been mostly empty when he'd arrived very early for practice, but he knew it must have been getting full by now. The first person he noticed when he entered the room was Wyatt Hayes, the one guy on the team who had played with Troy in Toronto. Wyatt had been the Guardians' backup goalie until 2 seasons ago. Now he was Ottawa's starting goalie, and a damn good one. He was a nice guy, but he probably hated Troy, and not because Troy had yelled at Dallas Kent. Because Troy had been friends with Dallas in the first place, and also because Troy had devoted his entire career to being a fucking prick. He hadn't been friendly to Wyatt when he'd been a backup goalie, so he didn't deserve to be friends with him now that Wyatt was an NHL All-Star. Wyatt glanced up at him from where he'd been tying his skate. "So, it's true then?" "I'm afraid so," Troy said, trying for a joke. The room, which had been buzzing with chatter when he'd walked in, had gone silent. Wyatt stood. "Is this the new and improved Troy Barrett?" Troy forced himself to meet Wyatt's gaze. There was nothing stern or intimidating about Wyatt, but Troy had always found his unwavering goodness to be unsettling. Troy tended to gravitate toward men on the opposite end of that spectrum, men who sneered at and made fun of nice guys like Wyatt. Troy answered him as honestly as he could. "I'm trying." Wyatt offered him a smile that seemed cautious, but certainly warmer than Troy's earlier attempts for the camera. "The enemy of my enemy is my, well, I'm not going to say friend yet, but I'll give you a chance." Troy's gaze fell to the floor. "Thanks." Relieved that was out of the way, he found his stall and began getting undressed. The room once again filled with chatter, and he no longer felt his new teammates' eyes on him. He was hauling on his new black and red socks when he heard a familiar Russian-accented voice cut through the commotion of the room. "Is Harris here yet?" The team captain, Ilya Rozanov, was scanning the room as if this Harris guy everybody seemed to be obsessed with was hiding among the players somewhere. "I don't think so," said Evan Dykstra, a defenseman Troy had played against but never actually met before. "But the new guy's here. Barrett." He nodded, and the brim of his camo trucker hat pointed in Troy's direction. Rozanov glanced briefly at Troy, then quickly turned his attention to Wyatt. "Harris said he was bringing a puppy today." The back of Troy's neck heated with embarrassment. This was how it was going to be if he wanted to keep playing hockey. Teammates who either hated him for ever being associated with Dallas Kent, or who hated him for being a traitor. Friends weren't going to be an option. Probably for the best. Friends sometimes turned out to be monsters. "I'm sure he'll be here soon," Wyatt said. "And you have to greet your new teammate, Roz. It's part of the whole team captain deal." "Fine." Rozanov strode over to where Troy was sitting. He loomed over him for a moment, frowning. Rozanov was much larger than Troy's 5'9" frame, and Troy had difficulty not squirming under his hard stare. "Am I supposed to like you now? Think you're a good guy because you finally noticed that your best friend is a fucking scumbag?" Troy managed to hold his gaze. "I'm just here to play hockey." It was a weak reply, but it was also the truth. He couldn't promise more than that. Rozanov studied him another moment, then finally extended his hand. "Welcome to Ottawa. I hope you like boring museums." The handshake was more of a hand slap, and as soon as it was over, Rozanov turned and walked away. It wasn't a warm welcome, but it wasn't as bad as it could have been. Troy's former teammates in Toronto had been furious with him, calling him everything from a traitor to worse. "You actually believe those attention whores? They're obviously lying, Barrett. Women are fucking liars. I thought you had my back." A commotion broke out near the entrance of the locker room as Troy was tugging on his practice jersey. He heard a loud voice he didn't recognize, followed by Rozanov exclaiming, "Fuck yes! Finally!" There was a small black puppy in the middle.